This is hashtag Real Race Talk from Texas, the Revved Up Sports Show on RevvedUpSportsShow.com and HornFM.com. Here's Bobby Chaffee and Rodney Rodriguez.
Welcome in, friends. A special edition of the Revved Up Sports Show on your Wednesday. We are April 29th, 2020. As we come to you, Rodney Rodriguez here from the Revved Up Sports Show studios. And, of course, as we've all been following along there on Facebook and various different points throughout the day, we did get that news this morning that we lost a great one, the Beaumont Flyer, Freddy Fryar. So many great years that Freddy just entertained us. Just such a great wheelman, and better than that, just a really good guy. Really good guy. Leaves behind a great family, and they will be celebrating him in the days that come. And I'm very glad to see that on some of the national sites as well, that those folks are recognizing the greatness that was Freddy Fryar. A couple of years ago, back in 2018, Houston was getting ready to fire off with a return for racing there, as there hadn't been anything happening since the end of 2016. And Bobby and I, with the show, we always, when this show developed, it was if we could ever get Freddy Fryar on the program, that would be, whether a million people listened or even if nobody listened, the fact that we got to talk with him was always a goal of ours. And with a lot of people that helped us get that done. And on July the 2nd, 2018, Freddy was on the Revved Up Sports Show with us. And as far as I know, that's probably his last in-depth interview, as he was with us for about an hour and 10 minutes. And just a very special, great discussion that we had with him. It was really cool to hear the stories that he told, and I thought that it would be a really cool tribute to Freddy if we presented that to you tonight. So sit back, relax. If you have a cool one, maybe grab that and listen to some great stories. This is back from 2018 as we celebrate the greatness that was the Beaumont Flyer, the one and only Freddy Fryar. Enjoy, friends.
All right, race fans, a very special day for the Revved Up Sports Show, something that we've been dreaming about, if you will.
My goodness.
Live from Studio 4 at the worldwide headquarters of RPM Radio Texas. This is indeed the Revved Up Sports Show. Showtime Bobby Chaffee right here, your humble host. Right there, the man with the plan. That is the Iceman, Rodney Rodriguez, one of my good friends and co-host. And on the line,
absolutely,
we do have the racing icon himself, Mr. Freddy Fryar. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to the show, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, you're more than welcome. I'm doing fine, thank you.
All right. So from I guess it's from Cassville, Missouri, is where we have Mr. Fryar on the line tonight. Is that correct, Freddy?
That's correct. That's where my wife is from, and so I moved here about almost 20 years ago now.
Wow. That so you've southeast. I mean, you have been, and we'll get to. Everybody's been messaging us, that wanting to hear your stories and your career that we'll talk about here tonight. Thanks so much for being a part of this. But we have to ask. We finally had a good NASCAR race yesterday. Did you happen to what did you think of that finish? Did you happen to see it?
No, actually, I didn't see that one yesterday. We were having some family outings,
Yeah. Perfect. Well, yeah, it came down to the end. Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson kind of rubbing each other, tried the slide job and all of that, and they actually had a really nice finish. So Freddie, I guess let's get to what everybody's wanting to hear, all about you, because you are a legend, not only here in Texas but just everywhere. How did this journey start for you? Let's go back, I guess it's back in the 50s. How did all this, the legend that is the Beaumont Flyer, how did it all start out?
Well, if you want to start at the beginning, I started, my dad was in the trucking business, not a large trucking company, just a small truck or two. And we always went to the races when I was a kid, even before World War II. I remember going to Atlanta, Georgia, at Lakewood Speedway when I was 5 or 6 years old. And he always took us as a group, our whole family. We went together, and his brothers and would go along with us, and we'd just have one big picnic at the racetrack every time we'd go. And this was back in the 40s, actually.
Wow. And that's really, Bobby and I, we have been, we're racing families. I mean, we've been around this all our life. That's really what this sport really is all about when you really get down to it, isn't it? Family.
It is. It's a family sport, and that's what makes NASCAR what it is today, and all racing, actually.
So, Freddie, we've done some research, and I saw somewhere that it said you started racing at age 14. So, at what point, being a 14-year-old, I guess you were kind of a Southern kid, so was it just natural to want to just jump behind the wheel of a race car?
No, actually, my brother started racing. My older brother, he was 7 years older than myself, and he started racing in 1947. And I would go with him when I was 11, 12 years old. Of course, in those days, we only had a pickup truck and towed the car on the ground, and I'd have to ride in the back of the truck to and from the races. We may be going 150 miles away, and I'd be in the back of the pickup truck.
Oh, my goodness.
And that's where it all began, actually, with my brother.
Wow, that is super awesome. And here we are. I believe it's 8. And this, I wondered about this because, you hear numbers thrown around, and I kept coming back to 826 main event wins or feature race wins in feature racing. Is that right? Or do you have a different thought on that number?
No, that's correct. As far as I can recall in all of my notes and everything that I had in my racing career. And I know that Dick Trickle, you know who he was.
Absolutely.
Of course, a NASCAR figure. And he won 1,000 races. And, of course, like I said, they ran 4 or 5 races a week in his part of the world, and we didn't get to run that much.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, I did just the quick math. That's an average, if we do the 40-year career thereabouts, that's an average of 21 race wins a year. That's crazy. How many races did you actually, go to a year, Freddie? How did you just load up and barnstorm all across the country?
Now, when I started racing, my brother that started racing, the whole family started racing, actually, you could race as much as 3 or 4 times a week. I mean, there wasn't much to do as there is today, like television and all the computers and so forth, but we could run Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. In Atlanta, the racetrack was a small quarter-mile called the Peach Bowl Speedway. They ran on Sunday night.
Wow.
So, I mean, there was a lot more races to be run in those days. And then later on, of course, it tapered off where we could only run maybe 3 nights a week at the most,
Sure. So those early routes, as Freddie Fryar, the Beaumont Flyer, the one and only Beaumont Flyer, joins us here on the Revved Up Sports Show here on your Monday evening. Freddie, when you were first getting going, I mean, was it? You've run it all. I mean, there was modifieds and dirt, and then of course there's a lot of younger folks that may not know how far back you go. What was the first thing that you dove into when you really started hitting the short tracks?
Well, I was, like I said, I was 14. Of course, I was going with my brother all over through Georgia and Alabama, and he would let me warm his car up, pack the track, because all the tracks back then were dirt tracks.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't have any asphalt tracks. And so he'd let me pack the track in his car, and then we were in Anniston, Alabama one Saturday night, and, I was packing the track with his car, and the flagman came out with a green flag, and I didn't have a helmet on or anything, and I just floored that thing. And I made a couple of laps, and my brother came out in the track with his hat on and waving and motioned me into the pits. And he said, okay. He said, "Okay, big boy, it's time to get out of my car and get your own. You just ran faster than I did."
Oh man, oh my goodness, that is awesome.
That's pretty cool. And I was looking on the internet and saw that you had run. I saw it on YouTube actually. It looked like it was a black number 48 sedan. Is that the same car that you ran on the beaches of Daytona with?
No, the 48 black 48 sedan was like a 32 sedan. That's when we ran the old modified, 32, 34 Ford Chevrolets and so forth. I ran on the beach with a 40 model car that we actually borrowed from a friend of mine. We was sitting around everybody had an old stove with oil dripping in it for heat, and we were sitting around the fire. And this was 1956. Sitting around the fire, and we wanted to go to Daytona, and we didn't have a car. So a friend of mine came in one night, and he was driving a 40 model Ford sedan, and they said, "Ken, we want to use your car to go to Daytona." And so he said, "Okay, you can have it." So we took the car and put all of our good stuff off of a short track car on it and went to Daytona.
Oh my goodness, I love it.
Off the good old days right there.
It. And Freddie, here in Texas, of course, as you know, we've talked, a couple of times there, just privately on the phone. And as I've mentioned to you, I mean, I grew up. You were, I wanted to be Freddy Fryar. And there's a lot of people that are watching this, that thought the same way here in Texas. But a lot of fans may not realize it, and unfortunately for us here in Texas, you're not originally here from Texas.
No, I'm from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where I was born and raised.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I would go anywhere to race, and I moved a lot to different places just to race cars.
That's pretty much,
that's
I think,
cool.
the way that was, when this sport, the sport has just evolved so much and so much different. We'll get into that here in just a little bit, your thoughts on all of that. But what happened, because you've run, in the Cup, what is now the Cup Series. You have events there. But what really drew you back to this asphalt late model racing where you were just the man to beat all of the time?
Well, actually, I wanted to go to NASCAR, but the opportunity just wasn't there back in the early days. There wasn't all the big teams like there is now. There was only, say, 5 or 6 teams that could win a race. You say the Pettys and Bud Moore and some of the big teams. In other words, if you didn't have one of those rides, you run in the back. That's what it amounted to. And I just didn't want to go quit my short track racing and go NASCAR and run in the back of the pack. So I elected not to do it. And I did have a couple of opportunities later on that we can talk about. I just don't want to take up every minute of your time.
No. You can tell us anything.
You can tell any story you want to tell, Freddie.
You tell us anything, and we're going to sit here and listen to you.
Well, we're going to back up to when I started right a minute.
Okay.
It's a pretty good story.
Put it in reverse.
I had a little motorbike when I was 14, and I wanted a race car because my brother had one, And I traded that motorbike for a 35 Plymouth Coupe. Just jalopy racing, actually. It's kind of like in somebody's, almost in their backyard or out in the field. And there was a lot of that back in the late 40s and early 50s. And so that's how I got started in my own car, in that 35 Plymouth Coupe.
Wow, that's awesome. It was a little bit easier as time went on. It got a little harder to where you couldn't, where you could just take a regular car and get out there and race. That's kind of, the quote unquote old fashioned way. You just kind of took what you had and threw it on the track and see what happened. Yeah,
actually, just go to the wrecking yard and start picking parts off of cars and build you one. Actually, is what it amounted to.
And is that with you, Freddie? Because I know for years, just for years as I've grown up through the sport, the one thing that many people always talked about that told me, as I learned more about racing when it came to you, is that you you got the most out of your car that you could. Is that where all of that started in the early years, where you were having to, there wasn't all the fancy stuff. You had to make with what you had. Is that where all that developed, to where you could take a car and just make it work exceptionally well?
Well, actually, I learned so much from my older brother. He was 7 years older than me, and he had been racing for 4 or 5 years before I ever even attempted to start racing. Mm-hmm. And he taught me a lot. And then I actually started concentrating. One time I wasn't running very well, and I had an old racer from Atlanta, Georgia. He came over and talked to me, and he said, "I'm going to tell you one thing that you can do to help your car." And it was on the chassis, and I did that, and we went out and won the race. I had never won a race before.
Nice.
And so from that time on, I concentrated on the turns, trying to go through the turns the best as I could.
So, Freddie, let's talk about the nicknames here. All of us here in Texas obviously know you as the Beaumont Flyer. I looked on one today, and it called you the Bayou Bandit. How did both of those nicknames get started?
That's exactly right. I moved to Baton Rouge in 1966 and drove for a company out of there, and I was there for 6 years. And I don't know where they got the name Bayou Bandit, but that's what they started calling me. So, and then when I moved to Texas in 74 or 5, they started calling me the Beaumont Flyer. I have no idea where it came from.
Well, it definitely stuck. That is for sure. So, throughout your career, I mean, it's just numerous championships. I mean, 7 series championships in NASCAR, and the cool thing about it is you won back in the day when there were actually state championships, which I wish we could get back to. Of course, here in Texas, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of racing anymore on asphalt, but those state championships, I bet that was quite the honor to actually be a state champion.
Well, yes, it was, but usually I would pick a track every year and just try to run that track the most I could, along with the other tracks, just to try to be track champion at that one particular track. And that's kind of what I did. Like, I was track champion at Nashville, Tennessee 1 year, Huntsville, Alabama 1 year, Birmingham, Alabama 1 year, Chattanooga, Tennessee 1 year, and Cleveland, Tennessee 1 year, Baton Rouge International Speedway 1 year, and then Jackson, Mississippi. So that's what I did. And then that's how I wound up just being a, state champion, is by trying to get all those points I could on a track champion.
So Freddie, what brought you to Texas? I had a little birdie tell me that one of the main reasons you came to Texas in 74 and 75 is that there was a bounty on Larry Child, and that you and your buddy A.J. Foyt wanted to try to take care of that bounty. Is that story true? Is that something you can elaborate on?
Well, the first time I went to Bar Speedway was 1969, and I was driving a friend of mine's car. Actually, he's wanted to go, and so I said, "Okay, I'll go, but we can't take our car. I'll drive yours." So we went over and won the race, and then I went back a few times after that to Marland, and then along about 1974, Ed Hamlin, the promoter at Marland, called me and asked me if I could possibly come to Texas and try to beat A.J. Foyt's car with Larry Child driving it. And I said, "Man, I doubt that." I said, they probably got the best equipment you could possibly buy. And I said, "Have you had anybody else come?" He said, "Yeah, we had Jack Ingram. We had Red Farmer. I don't know how many people that had to come down, and he couldn't. They couldn't beat Larry for some reason in AJ's car, because it was a Banjo Matthews car, just like the Cup cars." So anyway, I was fortunate enough to go down there and beat him the first night that we ran. So, yeah. But I had a little trick. I had some tires that other people didn't have. They were actually recaps.
No, still running.
they actually really worked on that track that good.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
So
Freddie, I think that was actually probably setting for later in your career, because I've been told again that, I mean, promoters used to want you to come to their tracks to beat guys. I mean, Larry Phillips, I think in Missouri, I guess maybe it was, that promoters throw you extra money to go beat the top dog.
Oh yeah, I always loved it. I love doing that, and it's hard to beat.
Yes.
The local hero at his own track. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. But I love doing that more than anything. Is trying to go beat him, and I beat him not all the time, but a lot of the time.
Yes, you definitely did.
And I got paid. I got paid for it. I got bounty money and deal money, and that's what it was all about.
I love it. We need that again.
All right. So
I can
no, go ahead, Freddie.
I was going to tell you about my Winston Cup, NASCAR stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yes, sir. Please.
I had the opportunity. I had a couple of first-class opportunities to go run Winston Cup, or called it Grand National in the early years in '60. But in 1960, I was racing in Atlanta at the Peach Bowl, and I was winning some races pretty often. And the Chevrolet race team was based in Atlanta, but I don't know if you know the story about that. There wasn't supposed to be any factory teams in those days. Mm-hmm. They were outlawed by NASCAR, no factory teams. But they all had little factory teams, like Freddy was the Chrysler people. They got all these parts and they'd give them to other race teams so they could have other Plymouths out there. And Pontiac was based in Indiana, and then the Chevrolet was, and this guy in charge of the Chevrolet race team, his name was Paul McDuffie. He had come on Sunday night and talked to me several times and asked me if I'd be interested in coming with the Chevrolet team. And I said, oh, definitely. That's my goal. And that year, he was killed at Darlington in the pits. So, that was one of the bad things that happened to me in NASCAR racing. Yeah. And then I had that same opportunity in 1970. I drove a Superbird at Talladega and had a really good finish. And my first time there, finished sixth. And the Chrysler rep came over and asked me if I'd be interested in going with the Chrysler team. I said, well, you bet. That's what I've been wanting to do all my life.
Yeah, sure.
So about a month later, that's when they pulled out of racing. Chrysler
of course.
Did. And that's when, you remember that back in then, and Freddy went with Ford for a while.
Yep, that's right.
So Freddie,
that was my opportunity that didn't happen.
Well, Freddie, talk about that Firebird. I saw that picture online, and I was immediately drawn to it. It was red and gold, and that big old wing. I mean, how different was it to drive that car at Talladega than it was, running around Meyer Speedway or Speedorama in Austin? Like, is it one of those things? Just it feels totally different, but yet at the same time, it's the same thing.
Well, actually, it's easier. It's just, if you didn't let the speed bother you because you're going so fast, you just didn't think about how fast you was going to drive the race car. It was really easier than running a short track. It's harder to win on a short track than it is on speedway, like it was in those days, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. That does make a lot of sense. So right prior, I guess probably right within that time period as well. Of course, Nashville. You're just synonymous there with Nashville. Before the days of the snowball and all of that, which we'll talk about here in just a little bit. I mean, you had the Southern 300 and I guess the Flameless 300. Those races. Just talk about those races. How neat were those? Kind of like a Super Bowl. At that time, I guess in the 60s.
Yeah, Nashville was, one of the main places. I mean, that's where the good cars were, Nashville and Birmingham. If you wanted to find out if you were running well, that's where you'd go. You'd go to give them a run and see how you did with them, you know. But I always did well at Nashville because I like the racetrack and I like the people. The fans were so great, and the competition was just terrific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where you measured. That's where you measured yourself there at Nashville.
All right.
Definitely Nashville or Birmingham. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Freddy, one of the questions that have come up, I've been told by multiple people that at some point you were involved with a car that was some kind of PT car, maybe PT 109 or something, that had to deal with like Jimmy Hoffa and JFK. Can you elaborate on that story?
Do you really want me to get into that?
You know, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine.
Well, let's start back at the beginning of this story. I was at Birmingham. It was like a Sunday afternoon. It was a big race, 200 lapper, late models. And this team from Louisiana came in and parked beside me. And they had a 60 model Ford Starliner, really a super nice car. And I got to talking with the guys, you know, and they said it was a Holman Moody car, a Grand National or Winston Cup car in those days, you know. And so we got to be good friends and just talking. And then a little later on in the day, in practice session, they came over and asked me if I'd drive their car and tell them what I thought was wrong with it, because the driver couldn't get it around the racetrack. So I drove the car, and I came in. I told them what to do, jack the car up, and let's check the rear wheels and see what was wrong with the car. And I told them what they needed to do. So they said, would you mind coming down to Louisiana sometime and running? I had a little 3/8 of a mile dirt track in Metairie, which is the outskirts of New Orleans. And so I went there and was driving the car. Anyway, we get back to the number thing. One of the boys that worked on the car got to be one of my best friends for life. And I said, what's with this P109? He says, you ever heard of PT 109? I said, yeah, the boat Kennedy was on. He said, well, that's where this car came from. It came from the Kennedys.
Oh, wow.
It was just one of those things that I wasn't involved in it in any way. That I happened to know everything that was going on after that, you know,
Yeah.
with them. But they built a racetrack in Baton Rouge, and this promoter who had the race car, of course, he wasn't a race car driver, but he was trying to drive the car. So that's why they wanted me to come down on the car some with them. And they built that new track in Baton Rouge, which is super nice, 3/4 of a mile high bank asphalt track. And anyway, there was a lot of controversy there about who built the track, where the money came from. You know, it was kind of like the Kennedy thing, you know. I don't know. I said, I'm a race car driver. I don't do anything else.
Yeah. So Freddie, is that the track? I've seen pictures. One of our good buddies up here is Tom Taylor, and he's an encyclopedia about you and many other racers. So I've seen pictures that Tom has posted. There's some photos of yourself and Glenn Schwabe and some Austin guys where you're racing. I believe it's in Baton Rouge. There's Ferris wheels and all this stuff at the fairground. Is that track?
No, that would be Nashville then, at the fairgrounds, because there wasn't anything like that in Baton Rouge.
Okay. I've got my states mixed up here.
Okay. No, I don't remember anything like that ever being in the track or around the track. It was just out in the middle of nowhere. In Baton Rouge.
Gotcha.
Freddy, I was looking online again. The internet has been my friend today. You can find a lot about you online, just in case you were wondering. Most of it's really good. One of the things that I saw today was talking about were you do just like a professional driver I don't know to what capacity, that you were able to sit at a table with John Wayne and Rock Hudson while they were filming the movie Undefeated. John Wayne, real famous kind of guy. What was he like in person?
Well, actually, I didn't get to talk with him much. I was just introduced to him, and he shook my hand. But my boss, who was one that owned the PT 109 car and also built a racetrack in Birmingham, he was a big Teamster guy in Louisiana. And, of course, I was his little pet, driving his race car for him. So he would give me all these good jobs working on the movie, driving the actors and actresses around. So we were working on a movie with Lynn Redgrave, James Colburn, and Robert Hooks, and I was Lynn Redgrave's personal driver.
Nice.
So I just took her wherever she wanted to go, and then he came by that set one day we were filming, and he said, "Come on, I want you to go over here with me to this other movie they're filming." He said, "I want you to meet somebody." Of course, that was John Wayne, and gosh, I couldn't even talk. I was so excited. There was all these big names sitting at this table, lunch table.
That sounds like Bobby and I getting ready to talk to you today.
Yeah, that's exactly how we felt today.
So and Tom is actually listening, Freddie, and he said it was actually in Shreveport, the picture that I was talking about, where there was Ferris wheels and whatever.
Oh yeah, yes, they did. Now we race there 2 weekends a year at the fair at Shreveport. Yes.
Yeah, and also back to what Bobby was talking about. I also read. I guess I went to the same place he did. So you actually also interacted with. I know your wife is listening, so we won't get into details with Miss Lee Merriweather as well. I believe as part of this conversation.
Oh, she was a super nice person, Lee. She was the nicest person in the movies that I have worked with.
That's
super
awesome.
Nice people.
That's awesome. That's super awesome. So as everything kept going for you, Freddie, you've just, and I've got to tell you, I was telling Bobby here with me, I put a call into the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame on Friday and said, I've got somebody that needs to be in there. So if you get a call, we started that for you so don't be surprised.
Hey, wonderful.
so don't.
You guys got it.
If we get you in a mess, we apologize.
Well, now y'all kind of you cut me a little short on that. Last time you was talking about me being in the Hall of Fame, y'all said I was only in 2. I said, "Well, wait a minute, boys." I said, "I'm in 4."
4.
Okay, 4. So we had
Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama,
Tennessee,
and
Ozark.
Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, and the Ozark, which is kind of Midwest, because it actually takes in Iowa, Oklahoma, and Arkansas.
Man.
And Missouri.
Well, you need to be in the Texas one. I can tell you that. We're starting a campaign right here. So just if you start getting phone calls, that's what that's all about.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. And what we'll do here, I want to ask you one more thing. Then we'll take a break, and if you just hang with us, we got to play a couple spots, and then we'll come right back. But I wanted to ask you. I know that. I love country music. I was raised on country music. My dad and I would travel to racetracks everywhere, and we obviously growing up, country music's what I listened to. You had a pretty good relationship with one Marty Robbins, racer and country music singer. Let's talk about Marty. What a good guy he was.
Oh, he was just a great guy, man. And he drove my car on about. I keep trying to decide if it was 6 or 8 different occasions, and I would just have the car ready, and he'd come in and get in the car and race, and he was gone just as soon as the race was over. He didn't stick around, but super guy. He was good to the fans. He was good to everybody, all the other drivers, and a little story about Marty. I went to Nashville to talk to Marty about running a race in Mississippi, and we were in his office, and we were talking racing, and his son came in and stuck his head in the door, and Marty said, "Get on back in there and go to picking. Boy, we talking racing here."
Oh my goodness.
He was really a funny person. I mean, he was very comical.
No, that's perfect. And is it true with him? I mean, I've heard this in just different circles over the years. Would he actually really race there at the fairgrounds, and then like he'd head off and go sing at the Opry on Saturday night right after he got done?
Oh yes. He'd go around telling tell all the drivers, says, if you guys want to catch my show, he says, I'm on last, so I can come out here and race on Saturday night, and then I can always get back to the Opera and do the show, the last one on. And if you want to come see my show, just go to the back door and tell the policeman it's on there, and he'll let you in, and you come in and watch the show. So he was just good to all us guys.
And he was a lot of people don't realize it, but he was a darn good racer. I mean, even with the Grand National stuff, he was plenty competitive.
He was. For no more than he raced, he did a great job. We were leading the race in my car in Springfield, Missouri, and I was so tickled. I wasn't driving that night. I was just there with Marty because they give me a pocket full of money for him to come in and drive my car. Anyway, and I said, Marty, I got all this money here. He said, I sing for a living, man. That's your money.
Oh my goodness, that is awesome. That is super awesome.
Anyway, we was leading the race, and the water pump went out on the thing, and the water hit the track under his wheels, and he spun out. And that's the one time I'd love to see it happen. I'd like to see him win.
Gosh, dog, that's really cool guy, and on top of that, just really, really good music. He's got some good ones.
Yes. He just I went to his house one time, and he had all these old race cars and motorcycles. He just collects everything, and
that's awesome.
But he's just a fun guy. I mean, I just love being around him.
Just a good dude. Freddie, what we're going to do, we're going to give you just about a minute and a half break, maybe not even that long. If you need to grab a quick swig of water, we got to pay a couple bills, play a couple of spots. Just hang there, and we'll be right back here on the other side.
Okay, I'll be here.
All right, more coming up. It is the Beaumont Flyer, the Bayou Bandit, Freddy Fryar, special edition of the Revved Up Sports Show, RPM Radio, Texas. Hang around, more coming up.
360 Marketing is your one-stop site for all your business marketing needs. With our wide variety of products and services, we have what you need to bring awareness and exposure to your business. We believe marketing should be fun and rewarding for both your business and your customers. We can find the right niche for any business looking to impact their marketing campaign. Whether it be marketing material, online marketing, or direct marketing, we can deliver on any budget. Contact us today for your acrylic signs, banners, window and vehicle vinyl, and more. We are Austin 360 Marketing, 512-913-7693. Find us on the web at austin360marketing.com or email Gino Cimitol at geno@a360m.com. Austin 360 Marketing. We'll make you look good.
Hey, race fans, we were talking about it for a while now. That's right. The second annual Liberty Bell 200 is this upcoming weekend at Houston Motorsports Park there in Houston. Now, we want everybody to go and support the track and support that race, but if for some reason you can't make it out to the track, our friends over at raceontexas.com will be providing a live pay-per-view coverage event. You can watch and listen to every lap, and including some of us there on the live announcer feed for only $19.99. So if you can't make it out to the track, just log into any device and watch it Saturday night from Houston Motorsports Park, Liberty Bell 200 from our friends at raceontexas.com.
Fast breaks and free throws, pick and rolls and rebounds, jump shots and hook shots. It's basketball season, and A-Line Auto Parts and Outdoor Power Equipment have the jump ball with hot deals on oil, parts, and lawn equipment, all at low local prices. It's time to dribble these great deals down the court for a backboard-shattering slam dunk. A-Line is waiting at the goal, so go where the pros go and find your A-Line online at alineauto.com.
Thank you for listening to this special edition of the Revved Up Sports Show on RPM Radio Texas. Now back to Studio 4 with Showtime, the Iceman, and the Beaumont Flyer.
All right, as I said, back here live from Studio 4 at the worldwide headquarters of RPM Radio Texas, a special edition of the Revved Up Sports Show. Showtime, Bobby Chaffee right here, the Iceman, Rodney Rodriguez right there, and as it said, still joined by the racing icon, the Beaumont Flyer, Freddy Fryar. So, Freddy, we've covered a lot so far. We've got kind of the, I'd say, earlier stuff out of the way. Talk about that time when you started kind of when you came to like the Texas stuff, when you started coming to Highway 16 there in San Antonio, and you kind of transitioned over to Pensacola some more and started running the Derby. Kind of fill us in how you went from kind of back then in the late 60s, kind of moving forward.
So in the late 60s, of course, that's when I moved to Baton Rouge in 65 and then stayed there till 72. And when my brother Harold got killed in 71 at a dirt track in Alabama, and I decided I'd move back to Tennessee after that because my mom was so upset about it. And I wanted me to stop driving. I said, Mom, I said, this is my life, my living. I said, guys get killed on the job every day. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can't just give it up. And, of course, finally talked her into realizing that it was my life and that's what I wanted to do.
Absolutely. So Freddie, as the years went on, I mean, you developed quite the relationship. We hear about the Alabama gang all the time, Bobby, Donnie, and of course, Red Farmer. I mean, you and Red Farmer kind of hand in hand when it comes to the best that have ever done this. Talk about those guys, the Allisons and Red, and through the years, your time with them.
Well, they were tough because they were like a 3 or 4 car team. Nobody had anything like that. Everybody else was just, in those days, or just one individual car that was running against them. Well, they were swapping information back and forth, and that sure made it tough to beat them. But I beat them plenty of times, but it wasn't easy.
No doubt about that. No doubt about that. So I'm sorry, Freddie, go ahead.
I mean, see, people don't realize that. They don't think about them having they had a 3-car team until Neil Bonnet come along, and then they had a 4-car team.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Yeah, Neil sometimes gets overlooked there because he was a little bit further down the road.
Right. He's a younger generation.
Definitely a little bit of a younger generation. So as you, and actually another one of the guys that really helped my dad and I with our, when we got into this endeavor years ago is Jim Pallas here in Austin. And one of the things that he talked about, he mentioned your son Mark. I mean, he's been with you. I mean, he worked on those cars, and we talked about it at the beginning. How important to you is that he's been with you all this time?
You're talking my son?
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he was with me when he got old enough to, when he got out of school. Well, he lived in Miami with his mother, so he would only be with me during the summertime, and then when he got out of high school, he came and lived with me and went to all the races. And my older son, he never really wanted to work on the cars that much. He loved to watch the races, but Mark was so valuable to me when he was growing up and all the work that he did. And you're speaking to Jim Pallas, there's not a nicer guy in the world than Jim Pallas.
Yes, that's for sure. He certainly is. Just a good guy, just a very good guy, very instrumental. I can tell you in my passion with racing. So as Texas started to happen for you, your battles here. I mean, let's talk about. We've got a lot of folks. We're just north of Austin, so let's talk Austin Speedorama. That was one where I remember vividly that Orange Nova was there, and my dad would lean over and he'd say, "Son, they're racing for second tonight because Freddy's here."
Well, there was a joke going on about that. They had a big race there once a year, some kind of festival race.
Yeah, the Austin Aqua Festival. Yeah.
Yeah, they paid big money, and they paid $10 a lap to lead it, and I didn't go there all every week, but I definitely went to that race, and I think I won it 3 or 4 times. I don't know, and it's called it Freddy Fryar benefit race. That's what they got to call it. You know?
So some of those Austin guys, you had Glenn Schwabe was always tough. Jerry Stanley, Charlie Cohen. So some of those guys that you raced with, who stands out to you? Because we'll probably go Austin, Corpus, and we'll ask you all that. But Austin, who are those guys that really give you a run for your money?
Jimmy Finger did, because he had a great sponsor.
Right.
They was spending lots of money on the car, and they had first class equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I didn't have as good equipment as they had,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of guys didn't. But he was tough to beat.
Mm-hmm.
But all those guys were good racers. They just didn't have. Some of them didn't have the equipment that made them good, you know. But they were good racers.
Sure.
Now, Freddie, one of the things that they've started down here is they've done kind of a San Antonio, South Texas Racers reunion, kind of a Facebook page. And a lot of pictures of you are popping up, obviously. Talk about how you went from the transition from the short track at Pan American Speedway in San Antonio over to the high banks there at Highway 16, because everything I've read and every time I've heard something, they still said regardless of the size of the track, when you went to San Antonio, you were the man to beat.
Yep.
Well, I like the bank tracks better than the short, flat tracks. I mean, you could just carry a lot more speed through the corners, and it was just much more exciting and much more fun for me. And that's what I liked about Highway 16. And it was kind of a unique track. It was like the straightaways were more flat, and then the turns, you know, the transitions was pretty abrupt, you know, when you went in turn 1 and come off of turn 2. And it's hard to get around. And I had been running a lot of high bank track, you know, like Nashville especially. And of course I had a lot more experience than the guys did in that area with the bank tracks.
Yeah, and you definitely were. I saw it many times. It didn't matter if it was that Nova. God, I love that Nova, and or the Camaro, whichever it was. Freddie, we talked about with Fireball with his sponsors. You know, I know he was with he had the Van Loos there. We're kind of footing the bill there for him for a while, the Vita Fresh and all of that. But some of your sponsors, the folks that wrote it out with you, because you did it the right way. You got out there and, like we said, got the most out of your car, but I know you had a lot of folks that helped you along the way that did a lot for your racing program.
Well, I never did really have, per se, a big money sponsor, except for the last couple, 3 years that I actually raced, because the other time I just had a little small sponsor, like I had Honest Charlie Speed Shop in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was one of the first speed shops in the country. But they weren't giving me that much money. They just, I just wanted the name on the car. I just didn't want to go to a racetrack without something on the side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought a race car looked so much better with a sponsor's name on it.
Sure.
So, but I had, you know, AJ Fasulo in Beaumont. Of course, he helped me a lot when I moved to Texas, and we had some good equipment together, the two of us. And then Jim Palace helped me a lot. He helped me in a lot of ways with stuff, you know. And, well, I think I just had a brain fade.
That's okay. That is okay. That is okay.
But
Freddie
Mack, and I want to mention him now. Lee Mack can help me.
Yes.
And he's a great guy, too. He's a super person.
So Freddie, we talked about, as you get to the late 70s, early 80s, you're a 2-time winner of the Snowball Derby. Snowball Derby just celebrated their 50th anniversary of that race. 2-part question. One is, how awesome is it to win that race back when you won it back-to-back? And then, are you surprised at how much that race has changed over the years? The amount of money it pays to win, the places that these guys come to race in Pensacola.
Yeah, I love racing Pensacola. I like the shape of the track, and I always seemed to run good when I went there. And but yeah, it's changed so much, like you said. But it's all about as they say in racing, cubic dollars, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, my grandson is racing, and we wanted to go to Pensacola, but it costs $10,000 just to go to that, and it don't pay but half of that to win it.
Sure. Yeah. And
so it's pretty tough. But, you know, I mean, you go down and you have to run against. Also, you have to run against some NASCAR guys that are winning the races too.
Exactly. Yeah, that's. But you know, the funny thing is, Freddie, you know, I remember Darrell Waltrip, Mark Martin, all of these guys would go, and it seemed like you know, you look back, the old Beaumont Flyer would get the upper hand on those guys.
Yeah, most of the time at Pensacola, I did run really well. I mean, I have to say that. That was one track that I ran good on.
No, that's awesome.
But I ran there. People don't realize that I ran there on that track when I was in high school in 1953.
Wow.
It was kind of the beginning of the Snowball Derby. They ran it in December, but they never ran it again until the 60s, late 60s. You know, and that's when they called it the Snowball Derby then.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned Jared a while ago. I was super excited a couple of years ago over at Central Texas Speedway. I got to call. Bobby and I believe were both there that night. We called the night that he won a pro late model race there, and the Fryar name back in Victory Lane in Texas. Boy, that was exciting.
Well, I was happy for Jared, but the guy that kind of stood out more than anybody on that was George Hagee, because that was his car, and it was fortunate that we could get that ride for Jared, and George just got out of it himself and let Jared in it, and man, he's such a good guy too.
Yes, he is, definitely.
So throughout all the time, Freddie, we know we've been taking a lot of your time. You've raced with everybody. I mean, all of the stars, you can see them up and down, whether they're short track legends like yourself, NASCAR Hall of Famers in the Cup Series, Grand National Series. Who in your mind, after all this time, who was your biggest rival? Like, you know, we talked about you winning everywhere and just, you know, taking home the big stacks of cash. But in your mind, who was your biggest rival that sticks out in your mind right now?
Well, I guess it'd have to be the Alabama gang, because, like I said, they was a 3 and 4 car team.
Yeah.
And it made it tough to beat those guys. You didn't beat one of them, you had to beat them all. You know?
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. So Freddie, got to ask you, of course, I believe 1983 All-Pro Racing Series champion, and that All-Pro, I mean, we got to see that here at Highway 16 and at Corpus a couple of different times. Bob Harmon and that series, your recollections of that really seemed like a great program to be a part of, and I wish that we had something like that now.
Oh, yes, I'd like to see it. I mean, Bob Harmon did more for short track racing in those few years that they had All Pro, I think, that anybody ever done, because he was a heck of a promoter. I mean, he was excellent, and he knew what he was doing, and he treated everybody fair. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that sure does go a long way with we racers. And kind of piggybacking off of that, got to ask you, then you had his counterpart over in the north. You had Rex Robbins, you know, with the original ASA, where you had Seneca and Trickle and Jim Sauter and all of these guys, and that All-American 400 when it really started in 81 or whatever it was, that was a true, pardon the phrase, civil war, North versus South.
Oh yes. But those guys in the north, they had a lot of good equipment. You know, they had it was like Ed Howe, who built the cars. He had General Motors kind of behind him on technology and engineers and stuff. And so those guys were tough to beat, and they were good.
Yeah, absolutely. And during that time, your time in All Pro there, you had the Fredrickson cars. You and old Hot Shoe Ballou, you guys would go toe to toe. That's another pretty tough hombre right there, wasn't he?
Oh, he was tough. Yeah, he was tough. He had some good backing, and he had some full time crew. I've never had any full time crew except for my son. You know, I just picked up my brother-in-law or a friend of mine would come and help, and you know, I never had a full-time crew.
Yeah. Like we said, you always did it the right way.
Yeah. So, Freddie, one of the comments we're getting on our live video here on our Facebook feed, somebody asked, they heard the rumor that when you finally retired, you were going to write a book about all your racing experience. How far has that book come along here recently?
Well, I looked into it, and I talked to a couple of people, but I just never did pursue it, actually, you know. I mean, I had a lot of people that wanted me to go ahead and do it, but I don't know. I just wasn't that interested in doing it, you know, and I know everybody else in racing has written books and they sell.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I'd have to have a ghostwriter because I definitely cannot write a book. I'd be lucky to read a book. You know?
I hear you there. And Freddie, I think one of the things that a lot of people, and I knew this, but I had forgotten this, but you actually won. You were the Truck Series champion before there was the Craftsman Truck Series. Was that a year before or so? No, that was the year after your All-Pro championship. Is that correct?
That's correct. 1984. Yes, that truck belonged to Frederickson out of Florida, and he was sponsoring my short track car some that year, and then I drove his pickup truck, and we did quite well. They ran 11 races, and we won 9 of them. So I guess you can do much better.
That's pretty damn good.
We were leading the other 2, and we had a flat on one of them. And finished second, and the other one we broke a suspension part and fell out of the race.
Oh man, yeah, that's pretty good percentage right there.
Well, it wasn't me that was doing all that. It was the truck. I mean, Neil Bonnet Race Cars, Frankie Grill in Alabama built the truck, and it was far above all the rest of the other trucks. There was one other truck like it, but you know, his driving ability, he didn't had that much experience, but he did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
But the truck was just had him all outclassed, actually.
So, Freddie, we've talked about the 826 wins, I believe, and you're remembering all of them. Knowing what we know about race car drivers, sometimes they remember the ones that got away. Any particular heartbreaks that you remember over your long and illustrious career here?
Any heartbreaks? So, of course, I suppose losing my brother was probably as big as they could be, you know. And he taught me so much, and he was my mentor, he was my hero, and he was my protector.
Mm-hmm.
When we were growing up, nobody would bother me because they knew Harold Fryar was my brother.
Don't get him. Yeah, no, that is definitely tough, and I know that the inspiration there for you, that's very tough. Freddie, I have to ask you, everyone is all excited because here in a year or whenever, or I guess in just a few months, they're going to have a race at Charlotte where they're calling it the Roval, you know, combination road course oval. We were doing that way before it was cool. Texas World Speedway, those races there, weren't those just amazing? The Texas Race of Champions, Texas Grand Prix. Talk about those days. Those were just so exciting for me as a fan.
Well, we had so much fun. I mean, I enjoyed road racing. I did very little road racing, but I really enjoyed doing it because it was so different. You know, you had so many things to do that you don't do on the oval track, like shifting gears and so forth. That, you know, it's just so much different, but it is so much fun to drive a road course. Now, as far as watching one, I don't care that much about it, but it is fun to drive.
And those were the days. I mean, you guys didn't have. I remember those days vividly. Not quite the aerodynamic packages and so forth of today. I mean, you had guys out there, and you had to tape down every bit of those cars sometimes so they didn't fly apart. No restrictor plates back then.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we were running fast, and you know, we were running short track cars on the road course, you know, and that made it pretty tough.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know some of those stock cars, unibodies that evolved, they weren't quite made to do that type of stuff. But those races there, you were extremely successful, and just some great your rivals there. Of course, Fireball Finger pops back up in that VitaFresh car, and Rick Rapp,
Oh, yeah.
and some of those guys, just very competitive, those races.
They were tough. They even had a road racer come in, and Tommy Riggins was his name, with a road race car.
I remember that.
And I beat him.
I remember that. I remember that.
Yeah. So, and I was with a short track car. I was with the Firebird at that time, I think.
And that was even when the Eddie's Auto Parts, and of course Eddie, another that's with you for a long time.
That was Eddie's car that I was driving.
Exactly.
In that race, yeah.
Jumping in that 46, you threw us all for a loop there. When the 46 first showed up. Wait a minute, what's going on here? What's that number all about?
Well, Eddie was a longtime friend of mine, and still is. I talk to him pretty often, and we talk about, reminisce about the old days. It was a lot of fun that we had together.
Yeah, absolutely. And those were even events. You mentioned Riggins. I remember they had Jerry Chalmers, I believe. JT Chalmers rolled up out of the Houston area. He had a Corvette. Still couldn't beat you. And then, of course, Terry Labonte would get out there and try to mix it up too.
And I tell you, it beat me one time because they brought a road race car in.
Mm-hmm.
They brought a real road race car in.
Yeah, that Oldsmobile Calais, I think that was, or something to that effect.
It was. Yeah. A little small car, like a mini racer.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good times there at Texas World. Just and I'm sure, I know I was quite young at the time, but there are stories that I probably can't tell out loud if we got kids listening here. So I can only imagine over on your end. So as everything went along, then you moved over to the crew chief side. Busch Grand National victories there as a crew chief, and how did the racing had started to evolve a little bit there? Did you see a lot of changes in technology when you moved to the other side of the wall?
Yes, I was getting to the point where at my age I needed to do something else, and then I had to. They called me from Piedmont Airlines race team with Billy Hagan actually owned that out of Louisiana, but his team manager had worked with me a few times. He'd gone to San Antonio and Corpus with me, and he called and asked me if I'd be interested in running a team for him that's going to start a new R&D team to give Sterling Marlin some more track experience, and he's also going to start a push team. So definitely I jumped on it because, like I said, I was 52 or 3 at that time, and I thought, this is an opportunity for me. So and I said, I will go on one condition, that I can bring my son with me.
Sure.
And so they accepted that, and I stayed there for a year, and they ran out of money, so I moved on.
And then for you, then it was the real fun stuff. Today's Richard Petty's birthday, and you were actually you did the ride-alongs. Is that what you did there with the Richard Petty driving experience? I guess that's still called that.
Yeah, I did that for about over 4 years. I was crew chief from '88 with different teams until about 2003 or 2004. I went with Richard Petty's driving experience, and I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed doing it. I had a lot of fun, met a lot of people. And so I did that for, like I said, 8 years, and I got tired of the road, so it's time to come home and stay here for a while.
Yeah. And so somebody mentioned to me when you were doing those ride-alongs, you may have been, aggressive like on the track, maybe slide that thing around, maybe tap the backside there up against the wall. Is that true with having the customer riding with you?
Well, only if if I had a friend that was riding with me. That's the only time I do anything like that. Yeah. Okay. No, I wouldn't do it any other time. So, but you had to know how to do it, because every lap you made was on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
So they knew how fast you was going.
Yeah.
And you wasn't supposed to go with a certain speed. And if ran over that speed, they'd slap your hands.
Oh no,
So,
dadgum
but
bosses.
I would get one of my friends in, and the clock didn't start until you came back around out of the pits and came to the flag. And boy, we would boogie from that first lap, and we'd run what time we're supposed to for the 2 laps, and then the last lap you get the checkered flag. Well, you had from there to come back in the pits to run as fast as you wanted to. So I even scared myself a few times.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Now, Freddie, I don't wish any ill will at all by the question I'm going to ask you, but I know that we think you're one of the best ever, if not the best ever, at what you've done in your history. When the time comes and you're no longer on the lead lap of this place, how do you want to be remembered?
I always want to be remembered as a good guy. You know, I didn't want to be remembered as a villain or anybody that took advantage of the other drivers or other people. And, you know, my brother was just the opposite. He wanted to be the bad guy to racetrack. He loved for the fans to boo him. So,
hey, well, you know, it's somebody's got to get booed.
As long as they're making noise, right? Is that the main thing, Freddie? Whether they're booing or cheering, as long as they're making a noise, that means you're doing something right, right?
Oh, it gets your heart rate up. Yeah, it makes you want to run faster.
That's for sure. And Freddie, you know, it's funny that Bobby asks you that, and the one thing that no matter who I've talked to throughout the years, what they would talk about first was how good you were, which we know that. You know, we saw it. We witnessed it. Thank God that we saw the greatness of you on the racetrack. But cordial, accommodating, would sign an autograph for anyone. Those are the words that are right after racing legend that have always been used about you. And I'll tell you what, if that's what Bobby asked there, if that's what you want to be remembered by, you already are, and you're still here.
Well, I you know, I always was a fan person. I enjoyed the fans, and I don't know if you can recall the times that I'd win a race like at San Antonio or someplace like that. I would take the trophy and give it one of the kids in the grandstand.
Yep. Absolutely.
That would mean more to him than anything in this world.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to say, Freddie, I guess you officially retired in '87. I started coming to the races when I was like 7 or 8 years old, around 1989. And up until now, especially the people around here, when I ask who's the best, without a shadow of a doubt, within seconds, Freddy Fryar.
Yeah.
And
well,
so, you know, you've made a lasting impression here that will go on for a long, long time.
I wouldn't think they'd still remember me, but it's an honor.
No. There has been excitement around here when we made the announcement that you were coming on here. It's been a buzz, and that's why you and I, when we first talked, and hopefully this will help, because isn't, in your opinion, you know, having been affiliated with the racing, you know, quite a while, and here in Texas, that we've got a race coming up in Houston, and it's just one of 4 for the season. Isn't it just a shame that we don't have more pavement racing in Texas right about now?
Well, it's just so sad that some of the old racetracks that I ran, I mean, half of them are already gone, and they're not in existence anymore, you know. It's so sad to me to see that happen. I love racing. It's been my life, and I would like for it to be for the young people to be able to enjoy it as much as I did all my life.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so these days, for you, what's going on these days? You know, are you out and about, kind of just doing your thing, or are you taking it easy, or what's happening these days with the Beaumont Flyer?
Oh, no. I don't take it easy. I love working on things. And
perfect.
Right now, at the present time, I have 3 old nostalgia race cars that I'm working on. One is the Nova.
Oh.
I got the original car back from the guys that I sold it to in 1980. And then I'm working on a 34 Ford Coupe like I ran when I was in high school. And then I have a 32 Ford sedan, like that 48 car you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they took the cars and cut them and made them smaller. And over in the east, through Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, the Carolinas, and all through there, even back through Mississippi and Florida, they called them skeeters because they were so small. But they're actually super modified. We had wings on the car and ran methanol and injection and all that good stuff.
Oh, man. That's awesome. That is
So that's what I'm doing these days. I'm working on these, getting all the parts together. That's the hardest thing, to try to build an old car, to get the pieces together.
And I got to tell you, Freddie, that Nova, I know I keep bringing it up. My dad's first race car, and he was late 30s, almost to his 40s when he finally was able to get out on the track, and he got a 70, I believe it was a 76 Nova, painted it orange. Freddy Fryar orange. Didn't have the 14, but the color scheme was because of you, the impact that you had on us, the years of watching you. But I remember where you mentioned getting that car back. I remember it was at the Lyle brothers that showed up, and it was number 74. Didn't quite run quite the same. Didn't get around there the same.
Well, it was the same car, but they cut the body off of it along about 1987 and went to Hueytown, Alabama, and got a Buick body and put on it. And so when I got the car back, of course, it had a Buick body. I was sad about that because I sure wish it had the Nova body on the thing. But anyway, Phil Lyle, I kept asking him, to buy the car from him. He said, well, he didn't know. And about a year and a half ago, he called me one day and he said, you still interested in that Nova? And I said, I'm interested in it, Phil. I've been trying to get you to let me have it for 5 years. And he said, well, come get it. I said, well, let's get together on price. He said, come and get it.
That's the best price.
That's right.
I mean, yeah, he gave me the car and all the pieces, the original engine that was in the car when I sold it to him.
Man.
And everything. I got it all back except the body. They had to cut the body off.
I look forward to seeing
that Buick
one.
body on it.
That was going to be fun. That's the cheapest race car you ever bought, right?
I mean, it is. But he's another good guy. He's just like, Lee Mackin and Jim and all the guys that's helping me. Yeah, he's just a super guy. He's always calling me and giving me parts. He has more parts than the parts store.
Nice. And the better ones, I'm sure. The better ones, I am
Yes.
sure. Well, Freddie, we have kept you longer than we wanted to. Again, we didn't want to take all of your. Not that we didn't want to keep you. Like I said, I talked to you for a week if you'd stay on the line. But what a pleasure this has been.
Well, I enjoyed it so much. I mean, that's my life. That's all I know, actually. So I should be able to talk about it. The only thing I've ever really done, other than have jobs, as they used to say, I have a job to support my racing habit,
And we'll probably have to see if we can get you back on, because I'm sure when people go back and re-listen to this, and I'll get you a copy of this that I'll get sent to you, I'm sure that there'll be 5 million more questions that come up after this is done.
Well, just call me anytime. But, one thing I would like to ask you is the rumor about the reunion at San Antonio Speedway. I'd love to see that happen.
That is something we actually had. We had Cindy Oates' couch on this program a couple of weeks ago, and she is working to get that put together. She date and time to be announced, maybe sometime in November. But that is certainly something that man, I would love to see you at that.
They had that Houston reunion in 2016, and I enjoyed that so much. And of course, I go to the one in Alabama for the Hall of Fame there every year in January. But I don't know, it's not like just all the guys together like it was in Houston.
Yeah, no, that was really cool. In fact, as we said before, Gita Shaw Knowles is the one that helped us get officially hooked up with you. So she says that she keeps in touch with you quite often, and she's probably been just as excited as we are that you've been able to talk to us today. So that's really cool. I got to say that it's like I never got a chance to watch you race, but Rodney and I are real big on Texas racing history, and it's just been an honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you tonight. And it's just cool. Like I have one of your diecast collections in there. It's a diecast, a number 14 Camaro. The only bad part about the diecast is it's got Rusty Wallace's name on it too.
Yeah, we both drove the car for the guys.
Hey,
but I think those guys, those girls that put that reunion on in Houston should get some kind of award, some kind of medal for what they did down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can definitely, Bobby and I tend to get in the middle of all these things, so I'll definitely keep you, firsthand information on what's happening there with Houston. So, speaking of that, I got to ask you really quick. I saw a picture, and I remember this. I was there for this, and I think it was 1985. Joe Horn had a huge race in San Antonio to start that season. Slick Yeomans there in Jim's car won that event. But you had some trouble, and you wound up, was that Waldo Harper's car that had come, I think, maybe an old Rusty Wallace car?
Yeah, I drove Waldo's car one time, yeah.
Yeah, that was that. I saw a picture of that. It was just a plain white wrapper with a 14, I think, with some tape.
Yeah, I think if that's the race I'm thinking about, I think I blew a tire and hit the wall right on qualifying.
I wasn't going to bring that part up, but
okay.
but yeah. So that was one of the times there. The 46 threw me off, but it still made pretty good sense. But yeah, that time when that happened, but super exciting. And yes, by all means, if the San Antonio things happen, it's going to happen. We'd love to get you here for that.
Well, thank you guys for thinking of me, and I really enjoyed the broadcast, and I hope that everyone else has enjoyed it. If there's, we can talk more later on, and I'll come up with a lot more stories.
Hey, we'll work. Maybe we can do this in person. Hopefully we can do this in person. But I definitely want to tell you, Freddy, as a lifelong fan, and just the impact that you have had, not only on myself, but so many people around here that just really stuck that love. They say it gets in your blood, and it's because of guys like you and your accomplishments and just the person you are that have made this such a great sport here in Texas. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, Freddy. Anytime. We'd love to hear from you again.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Have
Thanks,
a good
Freddy.
night.
Had a good evening.
So there it was. That was our great conversation that we had with Freddy Fryar. Back in 2018, and unfortunately, we never got to part 2. And I still have in my phone where Freddie and I had texted a couple of times, and we were trying to get part 2 put together, but we never did. But you listen to that, and it tells you everything that Freddy Fryar was. I mean, he was just an amazing competitor, and I think we talked about it in there at one point, and I've seen it a couple of times during the day. But when you went to a race and Freddie was there, you're probably racing for second because he was just that good. I mean, he really was just that good. And the memories. I mean, we'll have them for a long time. I mean, we're going to have those forever to remember the greatness that was Freddy Fryar. So in the days that come, there'll be tributes as everyone should, tributes to Freddie. And like I said, when we started, it's been really cool to see, around the U.S., I mean, where folks are acknowledging how great he was. Just such a phenomenal race car driver. And I mean, the days when you paid the guy to come in and beat your track favorite. I mean, that tells you how good he was. So, again, thoughts and prayers to the Fryar family, to Mark and Clint. You guys, man, thank you for sharing your dad with us all these years, because it's such a pleasure and such a joy to get to witness that. And, Freddy Fryar, as long as we're racing here in Texas, and it's I mentioned it on Facebook this morning, really nice day yesterday for Texas racing, even through all of this pandemic going on, with the great coverage from NASCAR for what's going on in Houston. And today it gets saddened a little bit, but even there, with this, we talked about when Bobby and I put this interview together with Freddie, with a lot of help, it was trying to revive Texas racing. So You know, it's something where hopefully maybe this, folks see this and they'll remember the great times that we had here in Texas and know that we're still doing this. With that interview, have to thank so many people that were amazing putting that together. Talked about it in there. Jim Pallas, just such a dear friend of mine, just such a great friend. He and his wife Barbara, just longtime friends of my dad and I. Jim was a guy that reached out to him a couple of different times, and as he said there, he talked to Freddy after that, and it was a pleasure for us to help bring joy to Freddy, even when that interview was done back in 2018, July of 2018. It was tough going there for Freddy even at that point. So to be able to help him and make him happy, that was really big for Bobby and I. Of course, Gina Shile Knowles, I mentioned there, and we've been talking to her the last couple of weeks with everything going on with Houston Motorsports Park and the Texas Short Track Racing Series. Gina was instrumental in putting that together. Between Jim and Gina were actually the ones that really help pull the trigger on that, as well as Neil Upchurch. That's a guy that so instrumental with racing here in Texas. We talked about him in that interview back at that time, and Neil, a lot of help, and Texas Tom Taylor. Mentioned him in there as well. I mean, Tom Taylor is a guy that if you're going to talk about racing in Texas, you have to, if you really want to dig into stuff, you have to mention Tom Taylor, because he's going to be the guy that's going to guide you, and he's going to help you, and he's going to tell you things that you probably didn't even know, even for young whippersnappers like myself. Not that young anymore, but those folks right there really helped put all that together. So again, celebrating today the life of Freddy Fryar, the Beaumont Flyer. Just so many wins, so many championships, different phases of it. And I think what you really take when you think of Freddy Fryar, this guy did it on his own. I mean, the guy did it on his own. I mean, there were a lot of obstacles that he had to overcome throughout his career. When it came down to it, it was he and his family that did it on their own, and that's exactly how he started. And the guy achieved so many things, and it's very special to have gotten to talk to him. I remember the day that we were working on that interview. My phone rang, and it said Freddy Fryar. Could not believe it. Just a very special time. And I did, at some point in there, I mentioned, and I did reach out again to the folks at Texas Motor Speedway. There is a big gap in the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame when you want to talk about folks that should be in there. There are folks in the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame that are not from Texas. And as much as we want Freddy to be from Texas, or wanted him to be from Texas, as did Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. He wasn't, but he's in all these Hall of Fames. He needs to be in the Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame. And if you get the opportunity, because that seed has been planted with those folks at that Texas, the official Texas Motorsports Hall of Fame at Texas Motor Speedway, maybe drop them a note, because we need to make this happen. Let's do it together. Godspeed to the Fryar family. Bobby and I are privileged that we got to talk to Freddy, and I'm glad that I got to watch this guy. He really put this sport in my blood. We miss him, but man, what a memory he left with us. Thank you, Freddy Fryar. Rest in peace, my friend. We'll remember you forever.
Bring your tide and bring your shame. Bring your guilt and bring your pain. Don't you know that's not your name? You will always be much more to me.